Welcome back, listeners to Learning from Friends. My name is Cade Curtis, your tour guide on this lovely adventure that I like to call Learning from Friends. But actually today, I'm going to take this back a second. I'm actually not the tour guide today. I've got 4 guests that are sitting here that are going to talk between Mother's Day and Father's Day. We're going to call this a Parents' Day episode, where I'm going to have 2 children speak with their parents just to kind of discuss what it was like being a parent raising 2 boys. Now, I'm going to turn it over to everybody, and I'm going to sit back and do this recording. Before I do that, we got Mom's quote of the day, and I'm going to kind of make this a tradition of whenever I turn the podcast over to someone else, I'll read the quote. So today's quote is, "The people who make a difference in your life are not the ones with the most credentials, the most money, or the most rewards. They are the people who care."
And with that, hello, everyone. This is Chris Byess. Any Learning from Friends longtime listeners might recognize me from a few early episodes and a wrestling podcast. And today we're here with the Byess family. Family Kate has chosen is myself, my brother Robbie, and my parents David and Beth. So Robbie, say hello.
Hello.
Mom and Dad, say hello.
Hello.
Hey, everyone.
And Kate nailed it right on the head. Today, we're going to talk about them being parents, about them parenting us 2 perfectly angelic boys who never did anything wrong in our entire lives. They're going to tell you all about that over the next hour. And I look forward to hearing that about how lovely we were. But to start off, as Kate had mentioned, since we want to discuss being parents, before you guys even got to be parents, let everybody know, Mom and Dad, how did you meet?
Well, I went with a friend of mine to Maryville College, and David was at Maryville College, and we went to high school together, but we weren't really what you call friends, just acquaintances. And I went to this college to meet her husband now, Tim's friend Bruce, but he ended up with a car wreck while we were there, and we got ready to leave, and I didn't have anybody to hug, so David said, "Hey, you can just hug me." And so I gave him a little hug, and then he started calling me, and that's how we started dating.
I thought you fell down the steps.
I did fall down the steps at some part of that.
She did fall down the steps. So I just started calling. I called and said, "Hey, how's your back?" And so it kind of went from there because, like she said, we went to high school together for 4 years. And I remember seeing her, but I don't remember ever speaking to her. So it's very odd, that how that worked.
Now, that is well done, Dad. I mean, she falls down the steps. You need to show concern. You need to have a reason to call. That was well thought out. I'm glad you fell down the steps, Mom.
And I wasn't drinking when I fell down the steps. Let me make that clear. I was looking at another boy, and I turned around to look at him, and I missed a step. That is the truth.
The universe literally declaring that you are looking at the wrong man. It was like, nope.
I guess so.
I'm well pleased for it because that means I exist. So I'm very happy that you are clumsy. So thanks God. Thanks God for making my mom clumsy. I really appreciate it. And how long have you been together since then? How long has it been?
We dated a year.
42 years.
43 years, counting the date. 43 years.
So 43 years counting the dating and 42 married? Is
Yes.
that it? Got it.
Or 43 married. I don't know.
I'll be 41 in a couple of weeks, so.
Oh, 43 then.
Well, it will be 43 in November.
Okay.
43 in November. Okay. So obviously you date for a bit. The magic happens. You come together. You get married. When did you decide that you wanted to be a parent? And what made you feel ready? Once you 2 marry, is there a moment where you looked at one another and you thought, this is it? Or was there not explicit planning in that regard?
We knew that we wanted to have children, and my parents were older. They were 44 and 45 when I was born. And my fear was that my boys would never know any grandparents if we didn't have children early on, because I didn't have grandparents. And I just thought you really miss out on something if you don't have grandparents. And so I knew we wanted to do it early on. Now, planning exactly when it was going to be, no, we didn't. And I don't know that you're ever ready to be a parent. You just kind of learn as you go, but it's definitely worth it.
Very little planning on my part.
Okay. I believe that. I believe that 1,000%. Now, when you do decide, though, that you want to have children, what's the biggest fear? Like, you've decided you want to have children, but obviously there are worries. What worried you the most about having children? Or did you just know from day one you had it on lock and everything was going to be fine?
Having children, when we were married and having children, I do not think there was as much thought put into it as there is today, because everything was so much of a tradition of how things went. You graduated high school, graduated college, you got married, you had kids. Boom, boom, boom. That was it. There wasn't as much thought in it as today. So back then, I don't think that the fear or really any thought went into it as this is nature. This is what we do. And we just followed nature. And
we'll do the best we can
Yeah.
with what happens. But then, after you do have children, you do want things. You don't want them to be hurt emotionally or physically. And you do worry that things will come their way that will be hard for them. So I guess just worrying that they'll have a great life is part of it.
For me, now looking at the world 40 years later, the things that if I was going to have a child now, I would have much more reservations.
Sure, more concern
and more concerns than I did in 1980.
Sure.
The world to us seemed more normal, safer,
Simple, very simple.
very simple, whereas today things are much more complex.
Sure.
So I think it was just, you hate to say this, there really wasn't a whole lot of thought put into it, unless you had some extenuating circumstance.
Sure. But otherwise, it was just how you lived.
Yeah, otherwise, it was just how you lived. You and your parents all got married about the same time. You all had kids about the same time. You all raised them about the same time. You went to the same church. You went to the same ballpark. Everything was very simple. Today, I could see someone contemplating a child having a lot more to think about and to deal with.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And speaking on that, I just asked you about what your biggest fears were, but when you actually had children, what proved to be the biggest challenges?
Well, when Robbie was born, we were not expecting a child with a birth defect or something that we would have to deal with. So that added a whole different dimension on taking care of a child. Because I remember when we were bringing Robbie home from the hospital saying, we didn't even know how to take care of a healthy baby. How are we going to take care of a child with a medical problem? And I remember shedding many tears, not knowing how we were going to do it. But we prayed a lot. We depended on each other a lot. And we got through it.
We had a good family support system.
Yes,
we
we
had
did
Bud
have-
and Carolyn.
We had a good family support
we had a
system.
good
And
family
church
support.
support.
To help us through it. And it was just one of those things back then. Again, it was just one of those things you just did what you had to do. You weren't prepared. You didn't know how. You just did the best you could that day and got up the next day and did the best you could that day.
I think people, and I won't say today is different, but back then we didn't see another option. We didn't say, we can't do this, so here we go, we're not doing it.
Sure.
I mean, or I'm leaving you because I can't handle this, so you handle it. There was not an option of that. We felt like we did this. This is our child. We love him. We'll do whatever it takes to make it be good for him.
Sure. And so just to give the readers a timeline, I say readers because I like to write. None of you are readers. You're all listeners. To give our listeners a timeline. So you get married in 81?
81.
81. Okay. You have Robbie in 83. Right. Okay. So meet in what? 78, 79, I assume. 79, 80 is when you meet officially, right?
So, no, well,
80.
80.
or
80.
79.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
79, 80.
Okay. Sure. So 79, 80, meet, 81
Went
marriage.
to high school for 4 years, never spoke to each other.
Then 89, our world changes. Dun, dun, dun.
We'll get there in a moment. We'll get there in a moment to the best part of the story, obviously.
Well, I mean,
89
was pretty good.
89 is a fantastic year for reasons that we will discuss.
It is.
But before we get to the magnificence of 89, and this is something we don't have to go into further if we don't want to, but Mom had just mentioned Robbie having a birth defect. I did not know if you wanted to elaborate on that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, because, it's one of the, it was so shocking
Simply because our listeners, when they hear that,
because
say,
again,
Yeah, what was it?
when you start looking at today versus 1983, the technology, what women went through as far as being prepared for pregnancy, I think they do much more testing now as far as the what at the grand.
Yeah, then they didn't do a sonogram unless there was a definite problem they knew about. So it was a total, we weren't prepared for that to happen. So it was very, very hard. Then Robbie had hydrocephalus, since I said a birth defect, and he had a shunt. And so we had every 3 months we were in the hospital changing out the shunt, doing a shunt revision, having a skull decompression. I mean, that went on for the first 18 months of his life. We were in the hospital every 3 months for about a week at a time. That was very hard.
And the thing today they would have already known that he had hydrocephalus in the womb. And I think probably even could have treated him.
I see.
In the womb. Now, I know I just had a friend that or an acquaintance that had a baby and I think they were doing surgery on it, really premature. And I won't say in the womb.
Sure.
But the medical technology, we would have been much prepared. This was such a shock because mom's pregnancy had been fantastic. Your mother never drank alcohol. She never smoked. She never took drugs. She never did anything that would ever harm the baby.
Right.
So the night that Robbie was born, it was a total shock.
Sure.
We had no idea. The doctor kept saying, boy, Dave, he got a big, and he's got big shoulders. And, and then in just a few seconds, our whole life changes. We go from, we're on the verge of this joyous occasion to the doctor saying, get David out of the operating room, because that's what it was like. It was like,
I see.
When he was born, I hear a weak cry, and I look at Dr. Kellstrom and I say, hey, Doc, everything okay? Has he got 10 fingers and 10 toes? And Dr. Kellstrom's like,
yes, but that's not the concern at the moment.
He did say, yeah, he said, yes, he does.
yeah. But then actually I looked up and tears were actually in Dr. Kellstrom's face. And he told the nurse, get David out of the operating room because it was a C-section. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on? What's going on? You need to get out. We need to talk. So then they took me out, and then your mother, of course, she's under anesthesia. So, in a matter of a few seconds, our whole world goes from this is a joyous, happy occasion that we're going through to what the hell just happened?
Sure. And just to interject, the idea of being in the birthing room and seeing tears in the doctor's eyes that has just birthed your child is difficult for me to envision it experiencing how that would have an effect on you.
And Dr. Levitt, the pediatrician, was on a stool, and he wheeled over to where I was and said, we're going to have to take your baby to Scottish Rite Hospital. And I'm like, what's wrong? And he said, well, he has hydrocephalus. And I'm like, what's that? And so then
lack of knowledge is
And so
terrifying.
then he wheeled the little container he was in over there to where I was, and then I knew what was wrong. I saw immediately what was wrong. And then he said, you need to give her something. And so then they gave me something, and I remember a few people coming in to see me in the recovery room. Dad immediately got in the intensive care ambulance. Went to cross the road.
They stabilized your mother. They had Robbie stabilized, and then probably within an hour and a half, Robbie and I are in an ICU ambulance going from Northside to Scottish Rite, which was a couple hundred yards. So then there's your mother. She's in the hospital with her family, and me and Robbie are at Scottish Rite, and the whole family, my parents, Bud and Carolyn, everybody's trying to get information, trying to figure out what's going to be wrong. Is he going to live? What's going to happen if he does live? So the next 24 hours were very
tumultuous,
and you would swing back and forth between hope and hopelessness.
Sure.
So it was a difficult night, but he turned out to be
quite a guy.
Quite a guy.
And I will say,
just ask him. He's
he's a genius.
Just ask him. He's the genius and the greatest thing that ever happened to us.
I've been trying to get y'all to realize that for years.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I will say, Dr. Kellstrom, that was my doctor. He was a great guy. He's since passed away, but he came to see me That was Monday night. And on Friday, he came in. He said, I've ordered the hospital beauticians coming in to see you today, and we're getting you cleaned up, and you're going over to see that baby. And I said, I can't do it. I can't do it. I just can't do it. And he said, yes, you can. And you're going to feel good after you see him, because I know what you're remembering from the first night. I know what you're remembering, and it's going to really do you good to see him. And my mom and dad were there with me, and I remember Mom saying, we can do this. And so we went over and saw him, and then I felt better about it. And I thought, we can do this. God's going to help us, and we're going to get through this. And whatever it takes to get through it, we're going to do it. And
speaking of help, you mentioned some names there that the listeners might not be familiar with. Carolyn and Bud, for example. So, fair listeners, Carolyn and Bud were the aunt and uncle of Robbie and myself. Carolyn is my mom's older sister. And they were like a second set of parents to Robbie and myself, right? It feels appropriate to mention them during this parent episode. But I bring them up as well because you mentioned help. One question I meant to ask you was, what is the most challenging thing you went through as a parent? And I think we're hitting upon it, right? This is most likely the most challenging thing, and you got through it with various people. Speak on the people that helped get you through it. How did your mom and dad, how did Carolyn and Bud, what did they do for you?
Well, the thing about it was Beth's parents were older. My parents were older. My mother was dealing with cancer at the time. So their help was limited as much more than Bud and Carolyn's. Mm-hmm. When you look at the universe aligning, Bud had just retired from General Motors. Carolyn was retiring from Southern Bell. They had no children, and they treated Beth like their daughter. So they were really the mainstay of the help as far as when we were going to doctors, when we needed a babysitter, when we needed money, all the things that went in the line. They were always, they were the ones that were there constantly, mm-hmm. So.
And I'll say this about Bud. Carolyn was a big support. My sister Murtis was a big support to me. She called, talked to me every day. And my mom brought us food, along. But I know Robbie was born in May. It was Christmas, right? The next Christmas, talk about hardly no money. We were rolling pennies at night to try to buy food. I mean, it was because the expense had been great. And Bud and Carolyn had been to visit, and I was in the living room. And so when I came back into the kitchen, there was a check laying on the dining room table for $500. And Bud had left that for us because he knew what a dire situation we were in. And it was Christmas, and he just knew. And I called him and I said, you didn't have to give us that money. And he said, of course I did. You have a good Christmas. And so it was those kind of things, different other people, because it was hard. I mean, you weren't expecting that. You have a new child. There's a lot more added expense, and other people, we would get cards and stuff from just the kindness of people that knew, the church was very supportive, too, at the time.
So and Robbie is named for Bud, Robert.
Right.
Robbie is named after Robert Albert Bates. So it was just, like you said, and, you look at it and I don't know what you call it, but Bud and Carolyn would have probably been some of the greatest parents in the world and never had children.
Right.
And they ended up having 4 children.
Yeah.
Because Bud was more like my dad than my dad was like my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And then the two of y'all were the sunshine of his life.
Right.
He was the happiest when he was with the two of you.
Yes.
So they went from having no children for better or worse to 4 children for better or worse.
Sure.
So that's how you get through it. Couldn't prepare for it, couldn't plan it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's the couldn't plan it. And it's one of those things, you hear people today say, we'll have children when we can afford it or when we're ready. You're never, unless you're just wealthy, unless you're just Bill Gates wealthy.
Right.
If you're the average person, you'll never be able to afford a child. And you'll never be the changes that they bring in your life. You'll never be ready for it.
Sure.
But
it is so worth it.
But when you have them, the one thing that I never regretted sacrificing for
Mhm.
is my kids. That's the one, so is it worth it? Absolutely. Absolutely.
I have to say, we took a slight turn, but I like it. We're here to celebrate parents, but we're also celebrating the people that aren't biologically your parents, but can also be like your parents,
Well,
right?
and Bud and Carolyn, they were the type of people, they took people from the children's home.
Mhm.
They would go to the Georgia Baptist Children's Home and get kids and bring them to their house and keep them. And so many people that had parents that their parents didn't act like parents.
Right.
Bud and Carolyn, they were probably the greatest set of parents that were never
Parents, right, of course. So this is a shout out to all of the parents, and I put that in quotations, whether you're blood related or not, right? That doesn't mean that you aren't a great parent.
Yeah, because
Right.
Bud and Carolyn's impact on my life Bud today is still more like my dad than my biological dad was in later years.
And so you obviously are going through it early on with your first child for all of these reasons. And so the years pass by, I'm assuming, until we get to 1989. And this is where the story goes to the happy ending, right? This is where things start
This is where all Hades breaks
This
through.
is where
there we go.
everything starts to really just look up. What happened in 1989? What happened that year?
Bubba was born.
Yoda.
Bubba was
Baby Yoda.
the greatest surprise of our life.
Yeah.
Unexpected, unplanned.
That's me. Yep.
Christopher Lance, Byess enters the world.
I had to quit being an only child.
Yeah.
No wonder I'm so unexpected and unplanned as a person.
Yeah.
Well, they had said, you might want to go undergo genetic testing and different things like that.
We got the bejesus scared out of us when we found out we were pregnant with you because what happened when
Right.
we found out it was unexpected. Your mother had surgery recently. And then we find out that during the surgery, that the anesthesia that they had used was known to cause defects in children. So here we're going out. We've had one child that was born with hydrocephalus. The second one, she was pregnant with you while she was under anesthesia.
Sure.
So we're going to genetic counseling, and they're just going,
Well, and also they
Could
said,
be, could not be. Who
yeah,
knows?
this medicine could cause him to be born without limbs, all kind of stuff, and it may do nothing.
Which is terrifying. Absolutely terrifying.
well,
know.
too, they said if they found out it was a boy, which I had to go find out that you were a boy, and if it was a boy, his chances would be 50% greater. He would also be born with hydrocephalus. So that was a scary time in our life, too. We've
Sure.
had several scares.
I was gambling and I didn't even know it at the
Yeah.
time. I had no clue.
Yeah. So, but of course, then we did, because of that, then we did get to have the things like the sonograms.
We had a lot of extra testing.
We had a lot of extra
Mm,
testing going
sure.
for it so that we could see that you were developing.
And one of the
normally.
scariest, because I remember the nurse saying, well, you're not so far along now. If you're afraid something's going to be wrong, you can always go on and terminate your pregnancy. And I said, I'm not doing that.
Mm.
There is no way I'm going to terminate this pregnancy. We've got this child. We're going to love this child no matter what. So we're not terminating the pregnancy. So
Let the
we
record
didn't,
show I'm very thankful they did not terminate the
And
pregnancy.
we didn't. And here we go.
Woo. Wow, I had a lot more of a perilous journey than I realized. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so then you're not in the world very long that you become the 6th case of Kawasaki's disease
Oh, that's right.
in Georgia. So
That's right.
the beginning with both our kids was not extremely smooth.
Yeah.
I was one of the first MRIs ever.
Ever.
Really young.
No, you were.
We had to go,
Yeah.
but we had to
I was about to say,
travel
we might need a
around.
fact check for that. Ever's a broad
Probably
term.
in the state.
Yeah, we had to travel around.
The
Maybe in the
MRI
state,
Yeah,
sure.
the MRIs and the technology were very new. The thing about it was the shunt that they put in Robbie 10 years earlier, the shunt didn't exist.
I see.
And, and then the
It was
children that-
developed from the space program. Also,
Shout out to NASA. Let's go.
But, so 10 years earlier, there wouldn't have been a lot they could do.
Any
Of
hope.
course, now the advancements, the advancements and everything, but the shunt
Now
now,
they don't even do surgery for it. They
Yeah.
just program stuff.
so then, you're born and you're good, other than you got this huge, you came into the world with this huge wrinkle on your forehead
Like
you
you've
had
been thinking a
thinking.
lot.
And,
I do like a good thing. I like a good thing.
Yeah, Stan called you Baby Yoda.
and then how old was it when you had the Kawasaki's disease?
Two.
So
It was
2
two.
years later, you're sick. We can't figure out what's happening. We're going to the doctor.
So
They're
sick.
checking for all these things. You're running a temp, and they're on the verge of thinking that maybe that you have
Some kind of
meningitis.
autoimmune
meningitis.
system.
And then all of a sudden, your mom gets home and there's a message on the answer machine. Miss Byess, this is Scottish Rite Hospital. Bring Christopher to the emergency entrance in the infectious disease control team.
We'll be meeting you
We'll be
there.
waiting on you. So,
The start of every post-apocalyptic horror movie that's been made in the last decade.
so we get in the car, we go to Scott. Sure enough, we pull up at the emergency entrance and there's people in white lab coats.
And there you are thinking, I'm patient zero.
Yeah, waiting
It
on
was-
us. And it's a disease called Kawasaki's. And at that time, you were the 6th diagnosed case in the state of Georgia. And the only way they caught it was our doctor noted the redness on your palms of your hand and your feet.
Feel like you've been burned.
They were bright cherry red. And our doctor recognized something about that. And that's how we found out that it was Kawasaki's, and you were admitted and given gammuglobulin.
That's what's go.
Which sounds like a word you just made up on the
No.
spot. Does not sound like a real thing.
And we laid in the
Gammuglobulin.
bed and watched Mr. Ed for 5 nights.
Yeah.
And I spent a week with Carolyn and Bud.
With
Yeah.
Carolyn and Bud, baby.
And so
We dropped Robbie off there on our way to
so
here.
you got gammuglobulin for several days. You had to have,
IV.
have a baby aspirin a day for the next year. And by the way, you're supposed to have your heart checked occasionally, because what we
Noted.
found out late after that was that there was the long-term effects of the Kawasaki's in the people was that it can cause heart issues later on in life.
Mm.
But they said also that probably a lot of children had Kawasaki's and did not get it diagnosed properly because,
see.
and it would run its course like a virus.
Sure.
Finally.
Mhm.
So,
But your temperature was
Yeah.
just so
Yeah.
high.
Right.
so anyway, so our starting out with children,
Yeah.
let's just say number 3 was not in the plan
Yeah.
at this point.
So
But I will say, for anybody that thinks we can't do this, yes, you can. You can always do it.
So what I'm getting is shout out to the doctor that saw my red hands, and shout out to NASA for
Dr.
creating
Clark.
shunts.
Dr.
Dr.
Clark.
Clark.
All right. If you've ever questioned why
We went with
NASA's
Dr.
around,
Clark's for a long time, too.
I remember absolutely none of this. But thank you, Dr. Clark. I'm glad I have a poor memory and I
was
didn't
in the
recall any of
same-
this.
He was in the same office with Dr. Levitt.
It was Robbie's doctor.
Oh, okay.
And
So-
Levitt's probably still practicing.
No, he's not.
So you have a bit of a rough start, but now you have it. 2 kids, right?
We're so grateful.
Things starting to get good, and they're both boys. So what was it like raising 2 boys?
I love boys. I'm glad we had boys because I think that gets rid of all that drama with girls, I'll just say. But a lot of fighting.
Us? Nah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
a lot of fighting.
Does a story stand out? Is there one fighting story in mind? Or was it just a series of just constant bickering arguments that plagued you?
What stands out to me is the car rides.
the
He's
car
on my
ride.
side of the car. His music's too loud. I can hear his music over here. His foot's over here. Now he's reading. Would you make him stop doing that?
He's looking at me.
Constantly.
Yeah,
Oh.
because there were enough years between the two of you, and after the first several years, when you got into kindergarten and early elementary, you were pretty sociable, so you spent a lot of time. Robbie spent a lot of time with Bud and Carolyn. You had a lot of friends around the house, so I don't really remember a whole lot of knockdown dragouts.
Yeah.
No, and it wasn't. It was just fighting like brothers
It
would
was just
do.
normal.
Brother
bickering.
fighting, bickering,
normal
fighting.
bickering. I mean, because the thing about it is, you both stayed in your rooms, and
True.
your interests were similar but different in what you did. So, other than like Mom said, the car trips on the way to Orlando.
Yes. Yes.
It's always hard.
That was always. I can hear it even when somebody had the headset in. I can hear his music.
That's the one I remember the most,
Yeah.
are the music arguments.
I can
Yes.
hear his music. Can you get him to turn it down?
And then the other one said, you can't hear my music. I can hardly hear my music.
Yeah,
And then it
he's
was
like,
just me.
I can barely hear it. You can't hear it. So, y'all actually got along
You're pretty good, really.
Pretty
But
well.
the age difference, I was telling Dad, I remember you were like 2 months old. Chris, you were 2 months old. Robbie was like 5, 6 years old. And I was taking Robbie to swimming lessons. You had colic. And I'll never forget this day. I go to the pool. Robbie's like, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I want to do this. You are like, would not stop crying. He's over going, I don't know. I don't know. And I'm like, oh my Lord, help me. What do I do? These two kids here.
That sounds like us. Yeah, that sounds like us. Highly inconvenient. So
No,
I
no,
believe
I would
that.
never say highly inconvenient.
No, it was.
I don't regret a second of it. I
No.
regret that Robbie had a birth problem. I regret that you got sick, but I don't regret a minute of any of it.
Well, then, when you're parenting us, I'm curious because I don't know if I've ever asked you this, and I don't know if I have a great gauge on this answer. But between you two, who would you consider to be the good cop and the bad cop, or did you even try to good cop?
Oh, that's too easy.
Oh, Mom's the good cop. Absolutely.
Yeah, I was trying to set that up for intrigue. We all know the answer,
Yeah.
but I wanted to hear it from.
Yeah, it was just how bad a cop could I be?
I got it a lot worse than you did.
Oh, let's not go there. God.
I think
I would-
Dad was stricter
Yes.
with Robbie the
Yeah.
first time because we were just learning what to do. I mean,
Well, that's
he
a
was
very
the
common
first
thing you
child.
hear about
Yeah.
the first child to the second child, the difference there, right? What was it like now after you have Robbie for 5 years, then it's me,
Yeah.
right? Is that much easier
Well,
going to
yes,
the second
one,
kid, I
because
assume?
one, we're not dealing with the thing with Robbie is when you were looking at him developing and what he could do and what he couldn't do. And like today, even today, you look, okay, what can you not do and what can you won't do? You
Mm.
know, and so when he was young, you had to look at the developmental side
Sure.
of what he could do and what he couldn't do and what was he really couldn't do and what was he's being a brat.
Sure.
And your mother allowed a lot more of let me be a brat. And I was
He was
too.
never a brat.
Okay.
But I imagine that'd be a very hard balance,
Yeah.
right? Just to
Yeah.
strike the balance
so
too.
with you, we didn't have that issue. And
You knew I was just being a brat.
Yeah.
You knew I had no excuse
Yeah.
that I had a developmental issue. I was just a bad child.
See, because you look at me and I'm the youngest of 5 children and there are no baby pictures of me. There's no stuffed toys from my childhood.
Right.
The only thing existing from my childhood, and I thought about this the other day, your mom walked in my office, on my bookcase, there's a ceramic brown owl that I made in Bible school at Pleasant Hill Christian Church in elementary school. Now, see, you can find pictures of all my brothers and sisters. You can find some of them that had the booties where they were bronze. By the time they got to number 5, it was like, feed him.
Sure.
And
Right.
You
Mhm.
feed him and don't let him fall off a cliff, and he's good. He's good.
Well, let me ask you this, Chris. Did it feel different being a second child? Did you feel like you were kind of put off sometime because you were the second child, or did you feel like
I never felt that way, actually. No. Maybe because things were just fine, but I always felt like I got plenty of love and attention.
Well, you did because, and I was always harder on Robbie because, you know, one of the things now, when Robbie was born with his situation, your mother and I should have had counseling to know how to deal with a child like that.
Sure.
Today they would automatically send you to counseling because whereas your mother had more empathy for him, I was more mad at the situation.
Sure.
And while I was mad at the situation, I took it out on Robbie.
Sure.
You know, we didn't know how to deal with that. So when you came along and it was easier to deal with, you know, that was like a new lease on life somewhat. So
we wanted to do everything right for Robbie, get his developmental help he needed? What did he need? We didn't know.
Yeah.
So we were just shooting in the dark all the time. And there wasn't people
throwing
out there to
darts.
help you.
Throwing darts at the wall, trying
so,
to hope that
so
something
there was
sticks.
definitely good cop, bad cop for Robbie. Not as much good cop, bad cop for you. Because
Perhaps that's why I don't remember it as much.
Yeah.
For me.
No, we had learned more, and you know, and quite frankly, probably worn out a little bit from the first one. You're kind of like, okay, well, this
Like
one,
all parents,
Yeah,
they get
you got-
worn out by the.
okay, he's
Third or
good,
fourth.
he's smart, he doesn't eat glue, you know, all these kinds
True.
of things.
Never ate glue.
So,
Never a glue
you know,
eater.
So it was, I guess, because of what we had went through. Parenting you
Sure.
was easier, so there wasn't as much good cop, bad cop with you. Of course, now Robbie. Here's the thing about this: Robbie had 3 good cops:
Sure. Calvin and Bud.
Beth, Carolyn, Bud. They were all good.
So you were just making up for
Yeah.
them in ratio.
Yeah, they were all good cops. I was the only bad cop in the bunch.
Let's say this about like the difference of y'all's births. I remember, and just in a 6-year period, 5-6 years difference with you. After you were born, they came in and brought me Lorna Doone cookies. With Robbie, they didn't let me eat for 3 days, and I remember they brought me
Oh,
Lorna
that is
Doone
brutal.
cookies, and I went, I get to have Lorna Doone cookies. Oh my gosh, this is so much better. And I just remember it was such
She's
a
always about the snacks.
I am now having a revelation. My mother has always loved snacks, and now I understand. Because after I was born, they brought you Lorna Doone cookies, and your love of snacks at the
I
appropriate
did.
time was born.
Well, just in 6 years, Robbie, we're in a little bitty surgical suite. I'm sitting, when we go to your mother, the hospital, we go into this massive suite.
with you.
And there's
little
this
penthouse.
giant entertainment center. And Family Ties is on TV. And your mother's in the bed, and the nurses are asking me, can we get you anything? Can we get you a snack? Can we get you a drink?
like the universe is making up for the
It was
the
like
first
6 years. No,
experience.
just in the way things are handled. I mean,
Sure.
how fast things change in 6 years. Having two boys, it went from you're in a little surgical. Everybody was. I mean, everybody back there were in surgical, and then when we went with you, they've got oak floors, and I'm like, what's happened to
and
the
your
hospital?
mom's like, because the nurses are asking me, and she's going, wait a minute.
They're
I
all
mean,
about him.
I'm here. I'm pregnant. I'm the one in the bed.
Baby, I'm talking to him.
They could tell Dad was clearly very stressed, Mom. Okay, obviously he
They
needed
wanted
the
to know if he
attention.
needed. They said we can stretch this out, and you can lay down. I said no, we can't.
Yeah.
No, we
And
can't.
I'm like, no. I like the Family Ties is on. I really like this episode. Can you give me a minute? So.
Okay. Well, then one thing I wanted to know, I was going to ask which one of us was the harder one to raise, but that might cause a discussion. So I'm going to change that question. Instead, I will ask,
Well, they've already really answered that one.
true, but I don't want to get into a discussion of quality of child. So I just want to know.
No, not harder. Well, the situation was different. It's not.
Right.
There's
And both of you were such great kids
Yeah, I
and
mean, you did-
teenagers.
Yeah. So
I mean,
I promise I didn't slip my mom a 20 before this.
we never
Guaranteed.
had any kind of trouble that we had to deal with either one.
Because that's what I was going to ask is what was hardest about us as children? Like what was my trait that was the hardest to deal with? And what was Robbie's trait?
I
There had to be something.
I do know one on you.
Oh, what is that?
When you worked at the movie theater.
Oh, so now we're out of baby phase. Now we're just in teenage
Now we're in the
phase.
teenage
okay. Well, I guess he was okay in elementary. I mean, other than the fortunate thing for us with both of you was we lived in a small community. Macedonia was a wonderful place to raise children.
It sure was.
Sure.
Macedonia Elementary, 200, 300 kids during y'all's elementary school years, good teachers, good principals, good friends, a good community.
Mhm.
So it was, from that standpoint, it was very easy to raise y'all in that environment during your formative years there in elementary school.
Mhm.
The teachers that you had, the ones that you think about the most. I know you and Miss Mann, you always very fond of Miss Mann, and Robbie's was Coach Key, so it was Macedonia. The old Macedonia was a great place to raise kids.
So, Robbie, what I'm hearing is we were great.
No,
Listen to this.
No, we didn't say great.
Oh, well, I already asked the question. You didn't give me any answer. We were great.
All right, now
Let's
Kate is sitting over here now, our host, and Kate has known both of you.
So, and he agreed y'all great.
Yeah, no, and Kate can throw in here because the thing about the two of you being 6 years apart, the friends that y'all share,
Yes.
y'all share the same group of friends, and so. Kate's sitting over here about to choke.
Well, I think I know the answer for me. It's that I wouldn't stop talking at school and I kept getting in trouble.
Yes.
I feel like that had to be one of the harder
Robbie
things for
never-
me.
Robbie never got in any trouble.
Unfortunately, for some of the teachers, you got the why can't you be more like your brother treatment.
Yeah,
Yep.
but the thing about it was, you were so funny and cute. Even when they were mad at you, they weren't mad at you.
Just got away with it.
Yeah, you just got, you've always had the Teflon personality that even when you were in trouble, you weren't in trouble.
Oh, but that time.
I love it. Agreed.
That time Chris got in the car, he was like 5 or 6. And I said, well, what happened with you today? Did you get a smiley face? Are you on green? No, I got in trouble because I was talking to Philip Fox, and this man told me I needed to stop, and I said, "I'll let you know when I get finished
I'm not
talking."
finished.
I'm not finished
for no
talking.
apparent reason.
For no apparent reason, I got in trouble.
I clearly had something incredibly important to say to my dear friend
Yeah,
Philip.
yes, you did. First, no, and and of course they would discipline you. Then we would see your
This
teacher.
man would tell me
Yeah,
about
we would see your teachers out in the community, and they're going, "Let me tell you what Chris did today."
And with Robbie, it was always like, he's so good at school. He's so quiet. And then with Chris, it's like, let me tell you what Chris did today. It was always funny.
I
Such a
definitely got the talk
contrast.
gene of the family for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I don't get to say the teenage part.
I mean, you can if you wish.
No, it's okay.
No, not a lot changed.
Yeah, I was just out living life, but not getting in trouble with anything. Just staying out a little bit too late after the movie theater, right?
Blame for part of that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when we talk about those friends in kindergarten that I hung around with, one of them is the man recording this episode, which is Kate Curtis. So,
Okay, you
Kate's
go
fault.
back to parent the thing I would tell parent people, the expectations that you have, because karma and life are so funny.
Sure.
Because for those listening that don't know, when I was in high school, I was a jock. I played football.
This was literally my next question.
Okay.
My very
Okay,
next
okay,
question
Okay,
That's
go
the
ahead.
question.
Go ahead.
was going to be to Dad. Just to preface this, David Byess is the first four-sport letterman in Cherokee High School history.
I don't know that that's fact.
I believe that is
I
factual.
don't know that that's fact.
And I am claiming it's factual.
Yeah.
And then he had two sons that, while we maybe played sports a little bit early on, didn't quite follow that path. So I was going to ask Dad, how did it feel to be a man who used to play semi-pro football, to have two children whose primary activities were band and theater?
Well, Chris, I'm glad you asked. Because
It's question number 14 on my list.
Yeah, the irony of all this is when I was in high school, like Chris said, I played football, I wrestled, I ran track, and I played soccer. Wasn't great at any of them, but I played them. And so in the 70s, people could be really, one of my regrets is that I could be kind of a rump and not kind.
A bully or dismissive.
Yeah, and so back then you kind of had the jocks, you had the smart people, then you had
of course,
the drama people and the band people. So the jocks always kind of took this stance against not all of them, but
the artsy kids.
Artsy kids, and and
Hopefully it's
and
not still that way
ashamedly,
today.
I had my part of that where I picked on them, and I regret that. So, and one of your things as a father, you think, okay, my child's going to be the quarterback. He's going to be the linebacker. He's going to be the center. He's going to be all these things. And you get a child that is direction is different. They're talented in music and they're talented in the arts, things that you didn't appreciate when you were young.
Or when you say talented in the arts, you mean they just read a lot of books
Yeah.
in their room.
So
No, acting.
I can remember Robbie's freshman year. The first football game of the year, I'm standing at the fence at Tommy Baker Field, and the band's out performing, and somebody that I may have known in high school comes up and goes, "Hey, Dave, what position's yours playing?" And I said, "Third trombone." And he said, "Damn, life's funny, ain't it?" But the thing about it is, after seeing what y'all did in the band and in the drama department, I couldn't have been prouder. I could not have been prouder.
Yeah, note to all the listeners, Dad came to every play. He came to every band
Your
performance
mother
and
and I
every
were
play. He was there at every one.
Co-presidents of the drama booster
With
club and
Robbie's
stuff.
group.
Yeah.
And, and looking back, and I tell people now that if I had known now what I knew then, I would have rather had a background in music. I would have rather learned an instrument, because when you learn that, you can do that the rest of your life. You
Sure.
can be 70 years old and play an instrument. I'm 63-year-old. I've had numerous knee surgeries.
Sure.
I've had knee replacements. I've had hip replacements. I can't play an instrument, and I sure as hell can't go out and play football today. So.
And I was a band kid, so
Ironic.
band kid.
I'm married into the band and theater family.
Yeah, so
The universe had ironic plans for you.
yeah, it was always a great source of joy and pride to go see the two of you
We couldn't wait to
on the
go
field
go
and
watch it.
in the drama.
Well, speaking
in
of
the
that, that
plays.
was going to be my question. The next one is, what are some of your proudest moments as parents?
One of my proudest moments is when you and Robbie accepted Jesus. That was a proud moment. And there's so many proud moments. It's hard to say a specific proud moment. Graduation, graduations, having a starring role in a play, having a solo in the band for Robbie. All of those are proud moments because there's no way to describe as a parent when you see your child do something and you see them shine. There's no other feeling like it. There's just no other feeling like it because you're so proud. It's like your heart is just going to burst because you're so proud of them.
And so that is why when your child takes a 10-week backpacking trip to Europe and only texts you once every 2 weeks, you remember all of those proud moments in order to give that rambunctious child some grace.
That's
Speaking
right.
from not personal experience, I definitely didn't do that.
Yeah.
So
That doesn't mean we didn't get mad at that child and go, what in the world is he thinking?
I remember watching a video one night, and the video said, if you're seeing this video, I'm okay. If this video doesn't make it, I'm dead.
Okay, listeners, let me make this perfectly clear. If there were not child abuse laws in the land, there's a possibility that one or both of these boys may not be here at certain periods in my life. Because
we were just
we're
keeping it exciting for you,
Yes,
Dad. We just gave you some spice. That's
because
all.
whereas the moments of pride and joy and happiness, for every 10 of those, there's one that, man, if I could just beat that boy to death.
I'll never forget the night before we needed to go to Colorado, and I was coming home late from a theater function, and we had a steep driveway, and I ran out of gas literally in the middle of the driveway. Like, if you think that's an exaggeration, I could not have timed it more perfectly. It's like once the car was tilted back, the last bit of gas left the engine.
And we were getting up real early in the morning. And I remember Chris came to the door and I'm like, go to your room, go to your room, go to your room. Your dad is not happy.
Okay. Let's set the
I tried to
Mom,
sneak in
don't
and
tell Dad.
I tried to sneak in and not wake up Dad, and I failed terribly.
What he doesn't tell you here is that it's 1:30 in the morning.
Oh, very late. Yes. Very late.
It's very cold. In the teens,
Yes.
it's spitting ice and snow,
Yes.
and we are getting up in 4 hours to drive to Atlanta to get on a plane.
Yes.
Now, there's no quick QT or anything close to our house.
True. This is back in 2006.
And your car was parked in a driveway, so we couldn't get out.
So I'm outside trying to find a container to get gas out of a lawnmower or anything to get his car up the road, which we did. But the thing about it is, this is not the only time that he ran out of gas
This is true.
at the driveway. He had done this again.
I did it at the driveway again?
Yes.
I didn't remember the driveway.
Yeah.
I don't remember the driveway.
Yeah.
I definitely ran out of gas another time. I locked my keys one time in my car at Cherokee High School, and Dad had to come open them up.
Yeah. You also, when Chris was learning to drive, Chris liked to tailgate people, and he liked to not get on his brakes. And we would say things like, Chris, you need to not follow as close. And so he told his mom and I one day, famous words, I'm younger than y'all. My reaction time is better.
An intelligent 16-year-old that clearly knew exactly what they were doing with their life.
So one morning I get a phone call from Chris. Dad, I'm down here at the red light and I hit a lady in the rear end.
I remember this very vividly.
You know,
I know the road.
I drive down to Canton and I see Chris standing there with the officer, and the officer's speaking to Chris. I don't intervene. I just walk as far away as I can, stay inside. And I see the officer put his hand on Chris's shoulder, and he tells Chris, you're obviously at fault here, but I'm not going to give you a citation. And he pointed at me and he said, because I figured that man right there is going to do more damage than any citation.
So shout out to Dad for getting me out of a ticket. Let's go.
So I walk down and look at the vehicle, and the vehicle's drivable. And I said, okay, we'll just go and scoot. And as I walk off, I glance over my shoulder and go, reflexes.
Oh, yep. Sometimes you learn that maybe your reflexes aren't quite as fast as you assume. And yet you still love us, despite me running out of gas and getting the car locked
Absolutely.
in the Cherokee High School parking lot.
The love for a child is an unconditional love. I don't think. Are you about to get to that?
That's reading my mind. It's like we're related or something. I don't know. It's so
Okay,
strange.
ask your question.
But no, that was exactly it.
Okay.
I was going to ask the difference between you love you have for a partner or friend and the love you have for a child.
I think every other bond can be broken, even if you would prefer it not, like with a spouse.
Mhm.
If you love them, but things just go really bad south, you can get a divorce. You can go in two different directions. With a friend, you can have little spats. You can be best friends. But if the right thing were to come along, it could divide your friendship.
Mhm.
With a child, I don't think there's ever anything, in my opinion, there is nothing that you or Robbie could ever do
Mhm.
that would cause me to go, okay, I'm not having anything else to do with you. There's absolutely nothing. It doesn't matter what it is. The love is so unconditional for a child. It's not like any other love that you have for anything. There's just no way to describe it. It's an unconditional love. And maybe where you don't agree with some of the things your child does, or you wish they'd done things different, it doesn't change the love you have for them. And no matter what y'all ever did, I would never, if you got in terrible trouble, if you did something I didn't agree with, I would never stop loving you or supporting you in whatever you did.
Well, I suppose that will take us to the last question I have, which is, what is your favorite thing about being a parent?
Mm. That you know that those children that you born are yours, and you just love them so much. I can't even, I think until you become a parent, you can't possibly understand the love that you feel for a child. There's just nothing like it. That's my favorite thing, is just the love that I feel, that that's when I feel the most complete. If all four of us together, that completes me. And it's just the completeness you feel from having those. And the best possible times in my life have been spending with you and Robbie and Dad, just doing what we do.
Just the joy of being around, and it doesn't have to be doing anything special.
Sure.
Just being in your presence, and just being with each other. And so it's like your mom said, when you're young and you love things, when you're in love with a girl, when you're in love with a boy, and you have that sense, the love you have for your parents, the love you have for your friends is, and all of us are animal people, and I grew up loving pets, and we've had pets. The love that you have for a child is immeasurable, because and you look at the love that Christ had for us. And when people say, why would Christ go to the cross and do the things he did? Because we're his children. So that's the love that he set in motion, that we have. And, and the thing about it is, the greatest joy I've ever had was being a parent. The greatest pain I've ever had was being a parent. I've never heard over anything like I have when y'all were hurt or sad or something had happened to you. I can forgive people for what they do to me. I can't forgive, and I, as a Christian, you do what you want to me, I can get over it. Do it to my child. No. I'm not going to forget that. I'm not going to get over that. So the greatest joy I've ever had was being a parent. The greatest pain I've ever had was being a parent.
I think too, one of the hardest things too is to see your child hurt, somebody hurt your child, or their feelings hurt, or see them be treated wrongly. That's a hurt, because you want to fix that so bad and you want to make it be different, and you just cannot. And you can try to comfort them and help them through it, but it really, when someone wrongs your child, you really lose you really get mad.
Well said, Mom. You really get mad.
Yeah. And the parental instinct, I grew up on a farm, and it wasn't unusual. I can remember seeing a mother hen and a dog or a cat be out there or something, where a mother hen had chicks, and those chicks getting up under that mother's wing. And this is a chicken, what their brain capacity is or anything like that. But still, the maternal instinct to take care of those. that mother chicken would die.
I mean, you
that
would risk your
chicks
life for your
from
child.
that dog or that cat or whatever it is. So, the parent and the maternal instinct, not just to humans, but expands all over the universe.
Yeah. Well, I know our goal today was to sit down and have a joint Mother's Day, Father's Day session and talk about the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of being a parent. And I think we have accomplished just that with a pair of fantastic parents in David and Beth Byess that I love very much, and made it very easy to deal with me running out of gas in the middle of the driveway at 1:30 in the morning when it was spitting sleet and snow. So that's it from me. If anybody else has anything, feel free. But if not, I will turn it back over to our wonderful host, Kate Curtis.
Rob, got anything?
Nope. A man of many words.
And a few words.
Well, I gotta say, this has been extremely special, having been around for, 30 years now.
Close.
Kind of that range. It's always nice to get another perspective, another viewpoint. And I have to give a shout out to every single parent, mentor, guardian, school teacher, anybody that plays an impactful life, even if it's only for a couple of months in your life. So you never know who's going to make that change for you. And I want to say, Mom, Dad, thank you. And all the good friends I've had over the years. I've been very blessed and very honored for that. And I'm just going to go ahead and leave us out here with, my name is Kay Curtis, your tour guide on this lovely adventure I like to call Learning from Friends. And most of all, don't forget, let your curiosity fly high.